Today, we're going to show you how to moor a catamaran alongside the dock. For example, the maneuver we usually perform when we go to refuel and arrive at the fuel station dock, where we always moor alongside. Please follow me. It's the beginning of a lovely late October morning at Marina Cala dei Sardi, the greenest marina in Italy, in Sardinia. We are now in the northeast coast of Sardinia, right on the southern edge of Costa Smeralda, and we came here to film an episode of the sailing lessons focused on catamarans. This video is from the iCAT SVN CATAMARANS channel, a channel about catamarans only. Today, we're going to talk about wharfage mooring, the so-called English-style mooring maneuver that we perform by approach the quay with our catamaran. And while I wouldn't say we perform it very often, it's a maneuver that we have to perform each time we need to refuel. Today, we're going to find out how to perform it with the help of one of the skippers from NSS Charter, the owners of Marina Cala dei Sardi. She will show us two different methods, a bow to approach and a stern to approach. We're going to find out when it's better to use each one, and if there are any tricks to perform this maneuver properly. Please follow me.
Seguitemi.
For our SVN Sailing Catamarans series, today we're going to talk about wharfage mooring with a catamaran. To talk about this maneuver, here with me is Simona Pasqua. And below deck, waiting to get to the dock to handle the lines, Mauro Pisano. They are two skippers selected by NSS Charter to sail with their clients on holiday. Of course, they're very experienced in catamarans because they both work on catamarans. Let's find out how to perform this maneuver. Before starting the maneuver, we have to take a number of factors into consideration. The most important factor to examine is the wind, and specifically its strength, but above all, its direction. I'm going to pull over here if the wind blows from this direction, for example, from the dock. I have to get as close to the dock as possible, because then the wind will tend to pull me away. On the other hand, if the wind is blowing from outside, then I'll have to keep slightly away from the dock, because once I'm parallel to it, the wind is going to pull me against the dock. So there are two different maneuvering methods to be used depending on where the wind is blowing from, whether from one side or the other. Right now for us, the wind is blowing from the dock, so we'll have to try and get very close, because when we stop, the wind will tend to pull us away. But we also have to determine the strength of the wind, because these are two factors that depend on it. My speed. The stronger the wind, the faster I'll have to be. On the other hand, on a day like today with a very light wind, I'll try to maneuver as slowly as possible, because the slower I am, the better I can control the boat. On a strong wind day, I have to hit the gas a bit, because otherwise I can't control the wind. The other thing that affects the maneuver, besides wind strength, is where I approach from. I can approach the dock from either the bow or the stern, as Simona is now going to explain. If the wind is strong, maybe we should approach it from aft. Simona, you sail catamarans for 4 months a year, all the time, without even taking a day off. Right. On Saturday mornings, skippers from charter catamarans have to disembark guests from the previous week, and on Saturday afternoons, embark new guests. So there's no time for a day off. They can't take a Sunday off. They begin working at the start of the season and end 4 months later. And in those 4 months, multiplied by your 20-year experience, you've done a lot of catamaran maneuvering.
Indeed, quite a lot.
So you're perfectly qualified to help us. Would you like to tell us how you approach the fuel dock?
If I can come either from the right or the left, from the two sides where the fuel pump is, and I have a boat in front and another one behind me, I prefer to approach from the side where the smaller boat is. For example, the one with the smaller beam, because it will be easier for me to pass astern.
At the dock, we placed two boats that belong to the NSS charter fleet, as well as this Lagoon 42. We placed an Oceanus 46.1 and an Oceanus 34.1. Simona is going to start the maneuver from the side of the Oceanus 34.1 because it's smaller, but she can do this today because the wind is light. On the other hand, on a strong wind day, you have no choice but to tackle the maneuver upwind. In the case of a strong wind, it's the wind that decides which way I can maneuver. How do you maneuver under light wind instead?
Under light wind, as I said, I pay attention to the smaller boat. If the wind is strong, I prefer to approach stern too. However, it is my preference because I have less depth towards the stern.
This means a shorter distance from here to the stern.
Right. And I have more control of the boat with the engines, which are behind.
Now we have to think about getting the boat ready. The boat must be prepared before entering the marina, not when we're already in. Before approaching the marina, while we're arriving, we have to start getting the boat ready. What does that mean, getting the boat ready? It means putting the fenders on first, and then I'll have to figure out which way I want to moor. I see the fuel deck from afar. I examine the situation, and I figure out which side I'm going to enter, whether it be the port or the starboard side. And I'm going to pull all my fenders to the side that will be facing the dock. How do I put the fenders on? I need to figure out the height of the dock. Usually the dock is much lower than a catamaran, so you have to put the fender very low. Keep in mind that if you put the fender half outside and half inside the dock, when the catamaran pushes against the dock, the fender tends to pop out and you're left defenseless, with the side of the boat without a fender. And this is why the fender has to stay very low. The boat has two weak points in this maneuver, at the far bow and at the far stern. Those are the points I need to protect the most. So if I have two balloon fenders on board, I'll put one at the far bow and the other at the far stern. If I don't have them, I'll put the biggest fenders I have on the two ends. Once the fenders are in place, I need to maneuver the lines. I'll put a line aft and prepare another one forward. What does this mean, to prepare the lines? It means, first of all, securing them to the cleat, and then carefully furling them and spreading them on the dock, so that they're ready to be tossed as soon as we arrive. If I don't do this, I'll have to prepare the lines when I get parallel to the dock, and the wind will have time to either crush me against the dock or, even worse, push me away from the dock. And at that point, I'll have to perform the maneuver again. Once the boat's been fully prepared, with the fenders and lines ready for mooring, I'll start the maneuver. Let's find out how this works.
Vado a iniziare la manovra e vediamo come si fa. Siamo entrati dentro Marina.
We entered Marina Cala dei Sardi, and now we have to moor at the dock on my starboard side, between those two boats. Simona chose to enter from the side of the smaller boat, even if this is not the only reason why she entered from this side. The other reason is that by entering this way, you'll be on the wheelhouse side. By being on the wheelhouse side, which means she'll be able to see better where the dock is. She was right in choosing the easiest way. And you should do the same, as long as it's possible. If you have a wheelhouse like this, you should always try to enter on the side of the wheelhouse. Now Simona is turning and going to face the dock. As you can see, she's still working on the rudder. She's not working on the engines. How is she going to approach the dock? If there's enough space, as in this case, the angle between the axis of the boat and the dock will be quite narrow. On the other hand, the narrower the available space, the more we have to widen this angle, to head more straight into the dock. Simona has started. She's getting the bow firmly to the dock. She's heading towards the dock, and when she gets very close to it, then comes out. Beware, the closer the bow gets to the dock, the more you'll find the boat pulled up against it the moment you leave. Now Simona goes out slightly with the bow. When she goes out with the bow, she approaches the stern to the dock. Meanwhile, Mauro is going to handle the lines. Initially, we always put the stern line in, unless the wind is very strong. We performed the maneuver upwind, at which point we have to do the opposite. We need to secure the bow line immediately. Once the stern line is in place, Mauro moves on to the bow line. As you can see, the bow line rests on the rail. Why put it on the rail? Because in this way, Mauro will no longer need to get on board, go to the bow, toss the line, and then return ashore. He'll be able to take it easily from ashore and take it to the bollard. As you can see, the bow had drifted slightly outward, pushed by the wind. How did Simona move it back towards Mauro to enable him to take the line? With the external engine. She's revved the external engine a bit and the internal engine in reverse gear, and the catamaran approached. But the catamaran has been pushed away by the wind. So we have the problem of moving it back inside. Simona, how do you get it back in?
By using the engines. So with the starboard engine in reverse, I get close again.
Why is she getting close again? Because the starboard engine is taking me in this direction. But above all, the bow line is keeping the bow still. The boat can't go backwards because it's being held by the bow line. All it can do is move in this way. It will go on like this and get back along the dock. This is an excellent trick, because even if the boat drifts far away from the dock, if you have your bow line set right, if it's too long, it'll cause you to bump into the other boat. You cannot do it. But if you have it set at the right distance, all you have to do is reverse with the external engine, and the boat will head to the dock by itself. You must also leave the engine in reverse to keep the boat alongside the dock, and get ashore yourself to check the lines. This is something that's used a lot with monohulls. In fact, we showed it on a video where we performed the same maneuver with a monohull. You can find it on the SVN Solo Veline channel. The maneuver has been completed. Here are the two lines, the bow line and the stern line. If we stayed here, we'd also have to put in two springs. Two lines from the center of the boat to each bollard, which are used to make sure that the boat will not move back and forth. They keep it quite still on the spot where we've placed it. This is useful if there's little space and the wind is strong, or if there are waves, so that the boat can't move forward and backward too much. Now, let's look at the same maneuver performed in reverse gear. Let's go.
Vogliamo andare?
Andiamo.
Andiamo. Adesso vediamo come si fa.
Let's see how the maneuver suggested by Simona is performed. That is, the reverse approach that, as she explained to us, she puts into practice in case of a very strong wind. To this purpose, you have to go upwind, as we're doing in this case. Why is she using reverse gear? Because in reverse gear, she can control the catamaran better and can also see the approaching dock better. During this maneuver, you have to keep in mind another factor, which is the propeller walk. The catamaran has two engines. The propellers are counter-rotating. So when the engines run together in reverse gear, the propeller walk is canceled, because one propeller cancels out the other. But when you have only one engine running, keep in mind that you have to deal with the propeller walk instead. You need to know which way the propeller of each of your catamaran's two engines is rotating, and possibly use the effect to your advantage. Now, Simona is approaching at a rather open angle towards the dock, heading directly towards the dock, still working with the rudder. Once she gets very close, she begins to turn the boat. How does she turn it? To turn it, she's going to use partly the rudder and partly the engines. Now she's started working on the engines. So the internal engine is in reverse, the external engine in forward gear. Here's what the boat does. She gets the stern very close, so that Mauro can get ashore, handles the line, and at that point, with the external engine forward, She approaches the boat to the dock. Mauro goes back to pick up the line, which, as always, he's prepared at the bow. And at this point, we find ourselves at the same spot as when we performed the maneuver with the bow approach. Please bear in mind that what we've shown you here are two maneuvering methods suggested by Simona. But if we ask 10 skippers, they'd suggest 10 different ways to perform the same maneuver. We find these two methods efficient. They can be used because they work great. But after starting with these two docking techniques, over time you'll find your own method, because any maneuvering needs to be adapted to the boat you're sailing. For example, on this boat, Simona used the rudder a lot, because the boat is very responsive to the rudder. But other catamarans, especially the larger ones, are far less responsive. In that case, you have to work more with the throttle levers than with the rudder. When you're on board your catamaran, you have to try to familiarize yourself with your boat and adapt what you've seen in this video to your boat. And with this, I think we've given you a broad overview about how to perform a wharfage mooring maneuver. If you like this video, please let us know. Give us your like. I wish to thank and greet Simona and also Mauro, who's now at the dock. I wish to thank NSS Charter for providing us with 1, 2, 3, and a 4th boat where the pilot of the drone is, and look forward to welcoming you to the next video from iCAT SVN Catamarans.
iCAT SVN Catamarans.